So the difference between initial importer and importer of record. Can you talk about the importer of record first?
Yes, so importer of record is a customs term. The importer of record is essentially the owner or purchaser of the goods, okay? So you have to have some kind of financial interest in the product that's being imported. So I couldn't buy something from, overseas in China and then Stephan, you say, you know what, I'll be the importer record on that. Could you? Sure. Would it be legal? No. They're looking for the person that has the financial interest. So did you buy the goods? Are you involved in the transaction? The DII, or the device initial importer, is an FDA term. And yes, you get that right all the time. Even you see brokers mess that up sometimes.
Yeah.
They assume the initial importer is the importer of record, but the FDA, device initial importer, and you can explain that more, is an FDA term only.
Yeah, and because again, for the FDA, I was talking about the foreign exporter. We're talking, a company who's shipping from another location. They need to be registered as a foreign exporter, and it's about traceability. Well, the initial importer is the same thing. For a domestic distributor in the US, they don't have to register with the FDA if they buy product in the US and they sell it in the US. But as soon as they buy product or import product from outside the US, they need to be registered with the FDA because the FDA wants that traceability to be
Traceability,
there.
yes.
Um, and yes, a lot of custom brokers, especially over the big company, the big shipping company, they confuse the term all the time. Actually, I think they don't know the difference.
Yeah,
Um,
sometimes I wonder that too.
I wish we can do podcast just for them, to educate them, what's the
Yes.
difference between initial importer and an importer of record. But so if I'm based in Australia, for example, I'm the manufacturing company, can I be the importer of record?
You can be the importer of record. Some countries do not allow non-resident importers. The US does. So the only time, though, people need to be very careful. The only time that the shipper outside of the US can be the importer of record would be if the freight terms, the Incoterms, were DDP. DDP means delivered duty paid. That means that the responsibility and the liability of this entire shipment to door is the responsibility of the shipper, including US customs duty and taxes and brokerage formalities. One caveat to this, and we have this conversation, I know, quite a bit. This was always the case, but it really started being enforced in 2019, so actually much more relatively recent than previous things we've discussed. If you are a non-resident importer, Australia, Germany, China, it does not matter. You must have an ultimate consignee, which is also different than the importer of record. You must have a U.S. ultimate consignee who's receiving the goods that is also on file with U.S. Customs. And what it comes down to is traceability, like you said, Stephan. So the U.S. government, even if this ultimate consignee in the U.S., which I'll make a side note, they are not the liable party. People get that confused. The importer of record is liable. The ultimate consignee in the U.S. has to be listed with Customs because they want to know, even though they're not the liable party, does this consignee have financial issues with the U.S. government? Does this consignee, it's the traceability thing. So maybe the shipper is fine, but maybe this consignee in the U.S. used to import. They used to be the import of record. Maybe they defaulted on duties and taxes.
Yeah.
Maybe they're on some no-fly list. They want to see that all the parties in the transaction are okay. So this becomes a problem because when people ship as non-resident importers, they say, we want to ship to, let's say, Amazon. There's the most popular one, right? Let's ship to Amazon. First of all, we won't handle Amazon shipments for this reason because it becomes it's a whole thing. Amazon's not going to give out their EIN number. I've seen it happen maybe once, right? So people go, well, how do we ship this stuff in? Well, the answer is you need a warehouse like yourself who's on file with Customs. You need a central point that can then be the ultimate consignee and then distribute to Amazon. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it possible to ship to Amazon? Yes, but Amazon has their own brokers. They have their own planes. It typically is an internal process that's happening there.
Yeah. It's the same situation because we do have a couple of customers who will ship directly to an hospital. And hospitals are very, very reluctant to give their EIN. So I guess it's the same situation for that. So they need to ship to a warehouse first. That warehouse become the consignee, ultimate consignee,
Yes.
and then
And
after
then
that.
distribute. And another note to make about that, and we recently just had actually a meeting with Customs about this specific thing, and it all came down to those low value shipments. People, they weren't being enforced as much. And brokers even were putting like fictitious names on these low value shipments because it wasn't necessarily a requirement. So now that they're pushing it, you might still have packages that are $1,000 that get sent through. But here's a caveat. Some of these courier shipments, which you know, many of these companies will not clear in a non-resident importer name. That's a bit scary because if you look at the documents and they see a U.S. resident importer here in the U.S. with an EIN number listed on those documents, many times they will clear that shipment in their name.
It happened to us all the time. And we receive an invoice for the brokerage part. So, yeah.
Yes. So just something to think about. Maybe it's showing up to your door and not in a correct way.
Yeah.